This is part one of two videos on tips and tricks to enhance visual course design. My name is Philip Arnold and I'm with OTC Online. The first section will be covering why visual design is important in your online course. In the second video, I'm going to be covering some of the things that you can do in your online course, strategies that you can use to enhance your visual course design. So let's get started. This is the opening slide of my presentation, and I just wanted to present this first to give my first impression to you of this presentation. So I always like, when I'm doing this live, I like to ask the participants what their initial thoughts are when they see this slide. Obviously, there's a lot going on here. What does that say about me as the presenter? Is it easy to read? Is it easy to understand what's going to be covered in the presentation to follow? So there are lots of colors here. It's busy. The graphic in the background is not particularly clear. Some of the text here down in the lower right hand corner is hard to read because there isn't a lot of contrast between the text and the image behind it. So just one thing that I wanted to point out, and I'll skip to the next slide, which is actually the slide I designed for the presentation. It's a lot more simple and clear. The text is easy to read. It's larger text. The colors have a nice contrast with the background. And you can actually see my name down here as well as the resources. And if you want to copy that link down, that will link to some of the resources contained in this presentation. So what is visual course design? This is what I like to start out with. What are we talking about in terms of an online course? Visual course design refers to images, but it also refers to how text is oriented on the page. Is there white space in between? Anything that's visual that will help students navigate and understand the content that's being presented to them. So again, this can include video, it can include images, it can include text, and how these elements are arranged in your online course. So why does it matter? Why is visual course design important? One thing that we don't think about too often to start is credibility. As the opening slide suggested, what did that say about me as the presenter? The image, the text that I had presented on that opening slide, what are your first impressions, and what will your students' first impression be when they enter your course? I was at a conference recently, and at the conference they had a refreshment table set up outside the conference area. And these, I just took a few snapshots of some of the labels that they had next to the refreshments. And I like to present this because this speaks to the credibility, I think, of the hotel. Not very well, unfortunately. If you look at these images, and it's kind of hard to see maybe in the video, but the one in the left-hand side is stained, it's taped. It's not very. If I were to be getting a drink of coffee out of that container, I'd have to wonder if it was clean. So um, the crumpled ice water label up here in the right-hand corner, and then the other one down below. But this is just one example or reflection on the hotel. And as you think about your online course, what image are you presenting visually in your course, and how does that speak to your credibility? Images, everything. And of course, understanding why visual design is important is to aid understanding in your online course. You don't want your visual design to be a barrier, get in the way of understanding or knowledge acquisition. So it's important to think about it in these terms. So here's an example. I see this often in a lot of online courses. Unfortunately, it's lots of text. When you enter a lessons area or a modules area, you'll see lots of text presented on a screen. There's no breaks in between, so as a student, if I were to see this right off the bat, I'd have some anxiety just on the amount of content there, but also that it isn't broken into chunks. And we like to talk about online course design being broken into chunks. Break it into smaller paragraphs, include white space around text, and can I use a visual or a graphical image to represent or maybe supplement what is being presented in this text. So if I click to the next screen here, you can see that this is a visual or graphical representation of Bloom's taxonomy. On the previous page, Bloom's taxonomy was actually described here in text. But if I use this text maybe broken into paragraphs or smaller chunks along with a graphical image, it's been proven in research that providing visual imagery to go along with text can help aid and enhance understanding of the content. So imagine this image presented with maybe a shorter condensed version of the text you saw on the previous slide. And finally, usability. How easy is it to navigate your online course? Is the content accessible? Is it easy to understand? To illustrate this, I have a map here. You can see new construction in red, future construction sites in blue. This makes sense to someone who doesn't have visual impairments, but if I go to the next slide, it's hard to distinguish, obviously, in this monochromatic version, the difference between new construction sites and future construction sites. Here's a different way of presenting the information, where the star symbol represents new construction sites and the square represents future construction sites. This makes it clearer and more usable even when the map is turned to monochromatic. This is just one example of how you can create content that is accessible or more accessible to the participants or the learner. In the next video, we're going to log into Blackboard and show you some tips and tricks on how to use content effectively and make it accessible for your students.